Thank you. I'm speaking about women's voice in America, but by extension, I'm speaking about everyone's voice. I'm making an argument today that the way we see history, the way we understand our past, and the way we create our, of course, understand our present and create a future that we will all want to see depends on a very inclusive notion of voice. And of course, this fits aligns perfectly with the concept of building as a community enterprise, and one in which every individual shares responsibility and has value in the community. So I'll start by just asking a question for each of you to think of for yourself. Name 5 speakers in history, just for yourselves, not for anybody else, just for yourself in your mind. Who might you say are the greatest speakers? Everybody have something in mind? I would venture to guess that most everybody here is thinking of a man. Maybe not everybody, but especially if you're thinking of speakers in the past, people are no longer living. I've done this many, many times and asked people to put their ideas in, and it's almost always a Abraham Lincoln, a Frederick Douglass, sometimes some of the ancients, occasionally a Cicero or Demosthenes, or maybe it's a Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, or maybe even a Ronald Reagan or an Barack Obama. But the point is, it's very seldom a woman. So why is this? I started thinking about this question about 2 or 3 years ago. Could it be true that all the great speakers in history were men? And that led me down a certain path of inquiry and investigation. And I started to ask, where are all the women speakers? Surely women have not been completely silent in history. So even though my presentation today is going to focus on American women, my research and my enterprise, so to speak, uh, the trajectory of my research has been global. So I investigate women's voices from around the world, and who were the women who made a difference in history using their voices by putting their voices into what we think of as the public square, the marketplace of ideas, the general conversation, the cultural conversation that's taking place at any given time. Just a small example, this is from the suffrage era. This is the period when women all over the world were petitioning for the vote. And this is a postcard. I'd rather kiss her than hear her talk. This is the woman who's on the woman who's on the soapbox speaking out for the women's vote, and the little boy standing there saying, I'd rather kiss her than hear her talk. Well, no, you wouldn't. You'd rather hear her talk than kiss her. Obviously, this is an infantilized and kind of nostalgized view of women as speaker. And this is something that I've learned in my research, that women have historically been infantilized and been seen as, of course, objectified. We know that, but not seen as individuals who have agency, who have knowledge, who have intellectual firepower, who have expertise to put into the cultural mix. So whose voices make history? By history, I mean, of course, the history books, the curriculums that we use in our schools and that students learn by. But I also mean history in the newspapers, in the journals, in the op-ed columns, in the editorials, in the cultural criticism, the book criticism, the movie criticism, in the letters to the editor. I'm talking about every form of media, every place where ideas get shared, disseminated, and understood in our culture. Whose voices make that history? And of course, I would say that it should be all of our voices. Okay, this is really quick. This is the resource that I set up. It's an online speech bank, free for everybody to visit, with speeches from all over the world. Speakingwhilefemale.co. You can go there, and my hope is that girls and women from all over the world will go there and see what a powerful woman looks like, read her words, hear her audio of her speaking, see clips of her, and also by that process, gain the inspiration and the courage and confidence to speak themselves. Really quickly, 3 women I'm going to share with you today, American women, very quickly: Sarah Parker Remond, Sarah Winamaka, and Clara Shortridge Fultz. Sarah Parker Remond was a Black woman born a free person in Massachusetts, and a great speaker. Even as a teenager, as a 16-year-old, she gave her first speech about abolition, about anti-slavery. And she and her brother were part of the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. You can see at the bottom, Mass AS Society. And in the 1850s, she was sent, along with her brother, to England to speak about abolition to the British people. I went ahead a slide. And this is a scene from Manchester in England, which was a great city that was built on cotton. The great metropolis built on the cotton trade. Of course, cotton would come into the port, they would put it in the mills and spin it and create cotton textiles and then ship it to the rest of the world. And Manchester got wealthy off of cotton. This is the great Cotton Exchange building, and there was a Royal Exchange building. There were thousands and thousands of prosperous businesses there. And Sarah Parker Remond went on a lecture tour, and here's what she said in 1859 in Manchester. I am met on every hand by the cry, cotton, cotton. I cannot stop to speak of cotton while men and women are being brutalized. So what she told the wealthy people of Manchester was that their prosperity was dependent on the brutality of the chattel slavery system in the United States, because that's where the raw cotton was coming from. And I mention her because it's hard to even fathom the bravery that it must have taken for her to summon to speak in public to these surely mostly white prosperous audiences in Manchester and explain to them that they were morally culpable, for that everyone is connected, and that they had a part to play in the brutal inhumanity that was taking place. And at this time, she thought, and the abolitionists thought, that they could persuade people to change their minds and go against slavery. They did not foresee that we would have to go to war over that. Next woman, Sarah Winamaka. She was an indigenous woman from the Paiutes tribe, the Northern Paiutes. And you can see right here where that is in the United States, partly California, the state of Nevada next to it, and then Northern Oregon. And of course, these indigenous tribes in America, they just lived on the land. They would migrate with the seasons. They would pick berries and fruits and kill animals and eat their game. But then along came the Anglo settlers and the white settlers and really put up fences and pushed them off the land. And this was her father, Chief Winamaka. They were a family that was involved in translating between the Anglo settlers and the indigenous community. And Sarah Winamaka went to Congress in Washington, D.C. in 1884 and gave testimony to congressmen and explained to them, my people marched 300 miles and the dear little children strung along the side of the road, frozen to death. She was explaining how the Paiute people were forcibly marched 300 miles to the north to a reservation in Yakima territory. And it was the dead of winter. They went through the mountains. They didn't have adequate clothing, and little babies would die in their mother's arms, and the ground was frozen solid. And there was not even a way to bury the children, so they would just have to leave the little bodies by the side of the road. Sarah Winamaka went and spoke to these white congressmen. She was surely the only woman in the room. And again, another example of a woman who used her voice and summoned in like extraordinary bravery and just a forthrightness, a clarity, a sense of moral purpose and clarity that was really admirable and extraordinary. Okay, third woman, Clara Shortridge Fultz. She was a white woman. She had 5 children and her husband abandoned her. She had to find a way to support her family, her 5 children. She wanted to be a lawyer, but at the time in California, a woman could not study for the bar, much less go to law school. So Clara Shortridge Fultz decided she was going to change that. She and her friend Laura DeForest Gordon, they submitted an amendment, California state law, and by hook or by crook, they got it passed. That at the time, the law said that only white men aged 21 and over could take the bar exam. Well, she got that changed. And she didn't get a law degree, but there she is on a mortarboard, one of my favorite pictures of her. After she got the law changed, she herself wanted to go to law school. She really didn't have formal education. She was craving formal education, But she'd gotten permission to do the bar exam, but she didn't have time. She was too busy um, as a lawyer. She was practicing as a lawyer. She'd studied herself, but she tried to apply. She tried to get into the Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco. And at that time, it was only open to men. So what did she do? She and Laura DeForest Gordon sued the law school, and unbelievably, they won. And they opened up the law school and other law schools, of course, by extension, because they all had to adhere to the law, to women. But Clara Shortridge Fultz never went to law school. She just practiced law based on what she was able to learn herself. She had a modestly prosperous law practice, and she was in the courtroom, and she was able to see how defendants in a court of law, who, according to American law, are considered innocent until proven guilty. Every person under the law is innocent until proven guilty. And she was able to see that defendants who were indigent, didn't have any money, were essentially steamrolled over by the prosecutors, because prosecutors had so much more power than the defendants. And she believed that it was the court's responsibility to protect defendants, people who were accused of crimes, until such time as they were proven guilty by law. She believed that we should have a public defender system to protect the indigent. This is just a courtroom scene that I threw in, so you could see this was not contemporaneous with her. It was a little afterwards, but it was all men, and all white men, of course. You could imagine what a situation would be like for a poor person there, or for a woman trying to practice law there. So in 1893, she went to a conference and she introduced the idea of a public defender system. Let the criminal courts be reorganized upon a basis of exact, equal, and free justice. Let our country be broad and generous enough to make the law a shield for the indigent, a shield for the victims, a shield for the accused, as well as a sword. She was the first person to introduce the notion of a public defender system, and it took a good 30 years for the idea to be implemented, first in California and now all over the country, all over the United States. And today you will hear many, many people saying that our public defender system is a mess, it's not financed enough, it doesn't work well. I take all that on board. I understand all that, but we wouldn't even have a public defender system had not Clara Shortridge Fultz introduced it, because she saw out of her own experience and her own ideas that we need to institute this reform. I would just ask you, what does a powerful speaker look like? The powerful speaker looks like all of us. So at some point today, I want you, yours is to go to the mirror and look in the mirror, and that is what a powerful speaker looks like. And if each of you are not putting your expertise and your ideas into the public square, then we need your knowledge, we need your wisdom, we need your spirits, we need your heart, we need your thoughtfulness. And this too is part of the Bildung concept, that it depends on each of us to contribute to the community and to the world we want to see. And I'll leave you with these words: whose words will we remember? Whose words will shape our society, and whose words will guide us for the future that we all want to see? So thank you.